Today I want to have a brief look at a distribution that I've never seen before, and it popped up on Distro Watch as a new focus to be easy to use Arch-based system. And so I've never heard of it. I thought I'd go ahead and give it a little bit of a try. So with that, today we're going to have a brief look at SDesk and see what that distribution might have to offer. Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Today we're going to have a brief look at a distribution review, and this one here I'll say on the outset, mostly this is Arch with Gnome with a few small modifications and a few other things to say. I did want to mention it because it did show up on Distro Watch and I'd never ever seen it before, and hey, let's go ahead and just have another brief look and see what we can come up with. So if you like this type of content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. That helps along in the algorithm. And with that, let's go ahead and have a brief look at SDesk, which is mostly a Arch-based distribution with Gnome, a few slight modifications. Now, it does have some extra Linux kernel headers, and it does have some removal of some Gnome extensions in order to streamline the processes. So it's not just somebody installed Arch, somebody threw Gnome on top of it, and then released the distribution. It also does come with a custom web browser and a few other little small tweaks. So let's go ahead and start by having a brief look at the website and just have a look. And this is where my big concern is. This is another one of the projects which is apparently just done by one person. And we've seen in the past that projects done by a single person, they can be very positive and they can also be very negative. There's a lot of things around it. Now, this person does do apparently a little bit of coding and programming. And if you go ahead and have a look at his site, which is at stevestudios.net, he has the SDesk here, so you can go ahead and explore that. And then he also has Blue, which is an innovative programming language for SDesk. And he says this is easy to use, compatible with multiple language targets, and customizable. And you can see that he has Swirl, an intuitive browser for Unix platforms, easy to use, extendable, works on SDesk and on Apple Silicon Macs. So this, apparently it is done with, is it the WebKit engine, I think is what Safari uses. Don't quote me on that one. I don't follow the Safari development as much. But it's not based on Chrome or Firefox. And so for that in and of itself, hey, at least you have somebody else taking advantage of some of the other features. So we'll have a brief look at that. And you can see that he just has a few other things. At his GitHub page, you can see the different projects. This is actually the release announcement 2 weeks ago for the 19th edition of SDesk. So we'll just read through his note here. So he has, it uses the Linux Zen kernel by default. So there's schedule improvements, multiple optimizations, and more kernel modules are being shipped by default. He's removed the Blur My Shell extension because he says, well, it looks good. It did cause a lot of system performance drop, and in this case, he's doing a pretty good job of making Gnome a reasonable sized and resourced distribution for Arch. And then he just has a few other small adjustments to the system as well. Has Calamaris installer and the Octopi packages. The one thing I did not like about the installation is it is automatically login is checked by default. And so I went ahead and unchecked that. I have found in the past that when you automatically log into a Linux distribution, it doesn't unlock your keychains. And so anytime you need to use a password, you have to log in anyway again. And that does actually cause confusion for some users, as I've seen people automatically log into the system and then wonder why they have to enter their password again when they do something simple like open up their email, or in some cases, just the web browser might ask for that keychain to be unlocked. And so that is the one thing that I noticed about the distribution itself. You can go back and look at the other projects he has going on here. So if you want to have a look at those, you can see that he is using some C in his programming. I personally don't care, but that's the one that people are saying, oh my, this is a memory problem. Only if you are bad at programming. I don't know if this guy's good or bad at programming. I'll assume he's good at programming. But even if that's the case, I don't care about that quite as much as other people do. I'm just pointing it out because it's something that the current government administrations are saying. So with that, though, let's go ahead and dive right on into our distribution review so we can have a brief look about what this looks like. So we're going to go ahead and boot up, and it loads up the kernel, and then it just goes right on into our loading screen, which gives us the logo there and just a simple startup. And for me, honestly, that looks really nice to see. So you don't get a lot of code on the screen. It's not like you see all of the systemd stuff running in the background or whatever else. Now we have Gnome and we have Gnome Classic. Apparently these are both running Wayland, so I did not see any X option in this. So let's go ahead and get logged in with our super secret password. That's definitely not 1, 2, 3. We land right on the desktop there. And when we get here, the first thing that I noticed here, we have our Octopi down here for managing your software. We have our music, calendar. We have Gary for email, not my favorite thing, but hey, it's there. And then we have the Swirl web browser. The other thing it does have is I actually thought they had Pomic or something installed because we have an update notifier. That's actually not. I don't know. I'm not sure which brings us along. Is this a separate extension? Does this come with Octopi? Basically just tells us what updates need to be seen, and you can see the list of all of the updates it wants to update and things like that. So you can hit your check now, and if you look at your settings on this particular system icon tool, then we can see the visibility. You can see it always visible, and you can see various other notifications and things like that. Under your advanced settings down here, we can actually see what it is supposed to do. So here's the command to update. So you can actually read this, and I'm not sure, can you modify this? Oh, you can modify that. Look at that. Cool. Make sure you don't mess it up if you don't know what you're doing. But if you do know what you're doing and you want to modify the update code, you can go ahead and do that. So we have a number of different things in there. So I really like that tool. I've not seen that before. I don't use Gnome much. That might be why. Under Octopi, when I'd first installed it, it would give me an error about the Pacman database not being there. You resolve that by probably just running your system updates, or in my case, I just ran the Pacman update command, which is pacman-syu, capital S, lowercase y, lowercase u. And only I just selected no when it asked me if I want to perform the update, just because I wanted to show you guys this updater and how that thing works. Although right now I could probably push the button and make sure it actually works. But you can see here, Octopi, if you aren't familiar with it, it's kind of like a synaptic package manager for Arch. Let's go ahead and do this. Do I want to do this or not? My internet connection is not super fast. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and push the button. It does want our password to start. So yeah, it basically just loads up the terminal and issues the command there. Let's see if it actually asks us if we want to confirm or not. It does look like it looks like all it does is just loads the terminal and launches the command. I'm going to say no because my download internet speed right now is not particularly good. So I'm not going to go ahead and do that because that could interfere with the video itself. Now, as far as other items here, we have the Swirl web browser. This is the custom web browser. I don't like about it, it does look kind of a little old and outdated, and every time there was some window dialogue showing up, I have a really hard time reading that, and I don't have bad eyes. Okay, so you can see that the tracking protection has been turned off, and you click it again, and now it has been turned on. So apparently it's tracking protection in the X, but there's no indicator for whether it's on or off. As far as extensions, they say it is an extensible, but if you go and hit add a plugin, it's just asking us to install a plugin from a local downloaded file. So I'm not sure how I would download and install an extension onto this. That's mostly just ignorance of this particular engine. But you can see that we have all of our options over here for clearing our history and things. Let's go and just start search for something. I do like that the default search engine is DuckDuckGo instead of Google. So let's just search for something and see what we get. So it's searching for DuckDuckGo. And there's something, gives us a definition, and then we get the Beatles song Something, and then we get the meaning by Merriam-Webster, and then a lot of other dictionary.com things. So that is the web browser that they have installed by default. You can see it is a basic GNOME. It is the latest GNOME version, obviously. You can see from there. We have LibreOffice installed by default. And we do have some other, here's a Qt VL2 test utility. Here's a video capture utility. Here's a media player and print managements and things like that. You know, I never actually had the tour pop up. It'd be neat if the tour would pop up on first install, but it doesn't actually do so. It's just the basic GNOME. Is it GNOME 46? Tutorial 45? I don't know. What version of GNOME are we on these days? I don't even know. Sorry, I just don't do a ton with GNOME. Let's see. See what we got. Oh, they're not telling us which version. Okay. I can't even do a hotkey to pull up the terminal. I think it's GNOME Shell 46. I was right. We are on GNOME 46. All right. So that's what we have. Nothing else special in there. We're not going to belabor going through GNOME. I'll refer you to previous videos we did on the GNOME Shell. As far as other applications and tools, for the most part, it's a fairly lightweight system. It works pretty well. And in my opinion, I mean, if you're just looking for something that you're just like, okay, I want to run Arch and I like the GNOME desktop, this is a decent install. You might have a little bit more options, maybe under a Dragora or an Endeavor if you can install GNOME by default. Now, this does only have GNOME as an option, so if you're looking to do XFCE or something like that, you might choose something that might have that more out of the box, unless you want to go through how to install XFCE on top of this, which I'm sure would not be a problem. But you can see that it is using 1 gig of memory, and for the most part, the CPUs are not doing a lot of crazy stuff. So to me, this works out well. So is it a distribution I'm going to jump to right away? Probably not, just because I tend to stay closer to the main sources. I'm using Endeavor for my Arch-based system. I use Linux Mint or MX Linux. Generally, those are the ones that I go to for my regular day-to-day work. And so for me personally, I wouldn't necessarily jump to it, mostly because we have a single developer. And as long as, of course, it just stays true to Arch, it should in theory work, although any tertiary adjustments might change as well. I didn't notice anything in the Arch package managers that seemed a little different. So I don't know, there's probably only maybe one extra repository for his software. But at that being said, it is not a bad distribution. It's very simply Arch with GNOME with a few modifications to make it work a little bit more streamlined. And we do have the nice automatic updater notifier and the button there to easily install things, which effectively does the command prompt way of installing the software, but does it at the push of a button, which makes it very useful. The fact that we have a custom web browser out that's not based on Firefox or Chromium is actually a very good take for this, although I do find that the browser does lack a few features, but overall it's not bad, and I really like seeing that people are making use of browsers that are not in those two core centers. And so if we start seeing more people doing that, we might get more extensibility. I did notice there's some help guides about how to use Linux and Pacman. There might be a help guide there on how to use the web browser as well. I didn't notice one right off the top because maybe it's assumed, hey, it's a web browser. But the fact that you go to install extensions and it's asking you to upload a file from your local computer does raise some questions for a new user that might be more unfamiliar with that approach. Also, some changes to the UI in the web browser might also be in order, as it does look a little ugly and misplaced with the rest of the system. But overall, it is a very nice distribution. I'm glad to see that it is one more option that is out there for us, and I just say good luck to the developer of the distribution for this and your programming language, and having the courage to jump out with a new web browser based on a completely different kit than all of the other mainstream players. So that, if you have an interest in having a look at SDesk, I'll go ahead and leave the link to that page down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.